off the bat. Spinorama. Diving save. Oh, what a stop.
Soares with an overtime.
Quinnipiac overtime winner. Overtime winner. It's a hat trick for Ricketts. The draw. There's a score.
The catch strike on the power play. It's 1-0.
For the fifth straight season, ECAC hockey regular season champions are the Quinnipiac Bobcats.
Hello and welcome into Studio 125. The regular season is now behind us and the best time of the year is here, playoff hockey. I'm Eli Ehlers, joined alongside my fellow men's ice hockey beat reporters, Zach Naffa, Zach Stokinger, and Ava Heaton. You guys ready for some postseason hockey?
I'm definitely ready for it. March, one of the best times of the year, especially in the sports world, and even more so on the ice.
Naffa said it. Can't wait to get started.
I'm ready for some debate.
All right, well, let's get right into the action. Before we get into the postseason, let's take a look at how the standings played out after the final weekend of play. The Quinnipiac Bobcats took home the Cleary Cup for the 5th straight season. Clarkson was right on their back the whole way, finishing in second. Colgate and Union round out the top 4 teams who are all receiving a first-round bye. Dartmouth, Cornell, Harvard, and Brown all finished in the middle of the pack, earning themselves a home playoff game. The bottom 4 teams are Princeton, RPI, Yale, and St. Lawrence.
Well, let's get into some debate for the evening. With the postseason here, new guys always emerge at the biggest stage. What player do each of you think will step up in the postseason? Naffa, start us off.
Yeah, I'm going to start off. My player is going to be Ryan St. Louis from Brown University. I just think that he's a player that's been overlooked so far this season because he missed a couple of games. But the junior forward, 5 game-winning goals. 3 of them came against ECAC opponents, and all of them were in one-goal games. So true game-winning goals. Second in the conference in points per game, tied 11th nationally, and he played in the Hockey East and NCAA tournament with Northeastern back in 2021 and 22 as a first year. So I think that having that experience helps. And another stat for him: 6-0-1 when he scores this year, 7-0-1 when he records multiple points. So he truly is that type of guy that is the X factor, and whenever he's producing, Brown seems to be winning.
Yeah, and he's a big X factor player, and the Martin St. Louis aspect, you know, his dad did a lot in the NHL, so you never know what he could do. But I like that pick, Naffa. But I'm going to go to my pick here, and I'm going to the net. My pick's Ian Shane. Now, hear me out. I know he hasn't had the best year, 2.42 goals against and a .891 save percentage, but when you look at his play last year, especially in the postseason, he led his team to the 2024 championship, and he also led them to a win in the NCAA tournament. So he knows how to play in those big-time games, and the thing to think about for him is he got put in a tough situation this year. Cornell had a lot of injuries. They really struggled early on getting their foot. They lost their captain, Kyle Penny, for a little bit. So to finally be able to have a full roster back and have Ian Shane in the time when it matters most, you're looking at the B-roll on the screen right now. He just dominated Quinnipiac all year and just made save after save. I think Ian Shane is going to be someone that everyone will need to look out for in the postseason.
He's certainly an elite goaltender, and even though he might not have had the best of season so far, I can't fault you for that pick. He's a guy that when he's hot, he can carry a team.
I certainly can't fault you there. I mean, Cornell really struggled, but we saw at MSG, we saw here, we also saw our Cornell. I mean, Ian Shane this year was lights out against the Bobcats.
Yeah.
I really like your pick, but I like mine just a little bit better.
All right.
I'm going to have to go with Eric Martino out of Clarkson. Experience in spades. He's got 139 career games played, 139 points. He's a point-per-game player for his entire college career. You can't go through the ECAC without a number 1 guy. Martino's a number 1 guy. I mean, you just look up there. Second in the conference in assists and points, leads the conference in goals, points per game, and game-winning goals with 8. Granted, you're looking at Clarkson. They're at the number 2. The Bobcats did beat them out, but Clarkson's side of the bracket, I really don't see a goalie that I'm really concerned about. I mean, Harvard's tandem combined is has a 2.89 goals against average and a 900 save percentage. That's decent. I would say that's pretty good for tandem. Noah Giesbrick out of RPI is 15th and 12th in the ECAC in goal and save percentage. That's kind of bad. No, that's pretty bad.
Okay.
And then even looking further ahead to Colgate and Quinnipiac, I have been very critical of the Quinnipiac tandem this entire year.
Really? You think? Wow.
I don't think I think I'm underwhelmed to whelmed with Quinnipiac this year.
I think Rand Pecknold right now has 2 goalies where you could put either goalie in net, and I think you're going to get a grade A performance, especially in playoff hockey. I don't think
I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't agree with that either.
Really?
But
I agree with that statement completely.
I don't know if I agree with a grade A performance from either of them
Okay.
right now. I think they both have their moments. I think
So let
sometimes
me
they
ask
do
you
it
this.
with
What goalie is Rand Pecknell putting in the net a week from today?
From what I saw from the end of the season, I put Mate Marinov in that.
I disagree with that, but we'll get into that later. And then I want to speak again about Colgate's Andrews Takas. Listen, I genuinely don't see a way where Martino's not going to get his. He got his against the Bobcats like the entire time. He had 4 points against us. I genuinely see Martino as being the MVP of the ECAC tournament when we're all done with this.
I like that pick, but let's look at my pick. I'm going CJ Foley from Dartmouth. Defenseman, second in the conference in points as a defenseman. That's insane to me.
Very good.
Dartmouth, 9-9 after the holiday break, even 500. He's the reason that they are where they are in the standings. They just missed out on that first round bye by 1 point.
Yeah.
I think they're not a top team in the conference. But they're going to need guys like Foley to step up. Even though their first-round matchup is against St. Lawrence, they can't go into it with a mindset of, oh, it's just St. Lawrence.
Yeah.
They have to go in at 100%, and C.J. Foley's going to be a big part of that.
I'll be honest, I went back and forth between St. Louis and Foley, so I really do like your pick. And as we see in the brackets, I am a big believer in Foley, so I can't put any blemishes on that one. I just think Foley is just a great all-around player, especially when you see second in the conference in points as a defenseman with that type of production and the talent in the ECAC. That's just, again, great pick overall.
And another thing to think about with Dartmouth, they had a really strong start to the year. They played some top-tier teams, and they were able to take them down. Then they sort of struggled, like you mentioned, 9-9 after break. So not the best, but if CJ Foley can stay hot in the postseason, who knows?
Well, he's certainly going to be needed for the postseason. But let's take a look at Quinnipiac. They've won 5 straight Cleary Cups, but have yet to earn themselves a Whitelaw Club since 2016. How can the Bobcats finally get over the hump? And what player needs to step up for them the most? Ava, who's your player?
I think everybody's expecting it from me, but I got to go with Jack Ricketts. He's a key guy on special teams, which is where the Bobcats have thrived all season long. They're a great power play team. They're a great penalty-killing team. Here's a fun fact for you guys. Quinnipiac, 12-2 in games where Jack Ricketts scores a goal. In games where he doesn't, 8-2. Middle of the pack. He has 6 goals in his last 6 games of the season. He's on a hot streak. And for them to win at Placid, they need leadership.
Yeah.
They need leadership. They have 7 first years playing regularly. They need a guy like Ricketts. And even though he's new to Quinnipiac, he's been around the block a couple times. He has 5 years of collegiate hockey under his belt now. He is a guy that's really going to need to step up as a leader. And Noah Altman said it when we talked to him. They're not going to have the conversation about their history at Placid this year. It's not worth it with how many new guys they have. Victor Chernesky in there being the only player on the team to play more than 1 game there. So they're going to need leadership and they're going to need production on their special teams. And I think Jack Ricketts is the key to that.
You bring up some great points about Jack Ricketts, but I want to go back to what was the record again when he didn't score?
8-2.
Yeah, I can't get behind that. Unfortunately, I mean, 8-2 when he doesn't score. I mean, you look at his assist numbers. What did he finish with? 6 assists this year.
You know, I knew you
He's
were
not
going
a
to
team player. He's not a team player. I cannot get behind someone who just scores. I mean, granted,
He's scoring big time.
Scoring
can you
is
bring up
needed.
the record when
Scoring
he did score?
is needed. I am not saying scoring isn't
12-2 when he does score. Though.
Okay, congratulations.
Hey, we don't need to shout. We don't need to shout.
Listen,
let me ask you
you're
this.
Correct.
Let me ask you.
Look, 8-2 is putrid in college hockey. If you want to compete with the top teams, 8-2
that's
when he doesn't score is not. I can't get behind him being the impact player.
So hear me out. They're 8-2 when he doesn't score, but that doesn't factor in the fact that he is coming to Hamden and he plays 5-on-5, he plays power play, and he plays huge penalty kill minutes with a lot of block shots on that penalty kill. Him and Victor Chernesky in there have been their 1A, 1-2 penalty killers. I just don't see how you can't say that, okay, they're 8-8 when he doesn't score, but in those games where he isn't scoring, he's still doing a lot of good things on the ice.
I wasn't saying that. I was just pointing out that the underlying statistic, Eli. I was saying that Ava had really good points about him. He's certainly been one of the better contributors for this team.
Okay. What's your pick?
Who's your player then?
Yeah, let's see.
All right. As I mentioned before, or alluded to before, the person who needs to step up for this team is Dylan Silverstein. I mean, granted, he's a first-year goalie, and asking him to step up in the ECAC playoffs is certainly a big task. But I mean, over these, he's 6-3-1 in his last couple games. You mentioned Nafa that Monte Marinov is your pick. But, I mean, look.
Oh, I didn't say he's my pick for a player. I say he's my pick to start in net.
Exactly. No. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
But look, Yanni Perez ain't walking through that door.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
Vinny Duplessis ain't walking through that.
They don't.
Ain't walking through that
think,
door.
I don't think they have any more
He's
eligibility.
played 77%. Yeah, no. He's played 77% of his game as a first year. Very commendable. And I mean, he's put up a pretty good goals against average and save percentage. I mean, but he still needs to step up. You need that number one goalie. I mean, you look at Cornell, Ian Shane. I mean, that's the prime example there. He's going to win you games. And Silverstein has won us games, but he's also had a lot of stinkers. And I mean, that happens with the first year. But if you don't have, like, the goaltender, the netminder, is the spine of a team, you're going to need someone like Silverstein to step up when you have, when you're going into a playoff situation.
So let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what each of their records is in their last 5 games that they played?
Because it ain't good for him.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dylan Silverstein, 3-2. That's good. It's over 500. Do you know what Matej Marinov's is?
Is it 5-0?
Yeah, it's 5-0.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we're going with Silverstein still?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in one of those wins,
I'm sticking
in
with
one of
that.
those wins, the 5-4 win over Dartmouth, 4 goals against. He has struggled.
I
and
didn't
if you
say
think-
that he didn't struggle. You look at the Northeastern game. That was.
I'm just saying, I'd go with Marinov, especially when you look at Silverstein played both games against Clarkson this season, and you think Clarkson and Martino are your players to watch.
That's
He
what I
gave
said.
up a less than 800 save percentage against that team. So the best team in the conference besides you and your first-year goaltender struggled, I think you got to go with the guy that has a little more experience then.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess, but he didn't play a lot. And, I mean, he's got rest. That's certainly something that you could say is an aspect. But I'm sticking to my guns. I think Silverstein needs to step up and to help this team win.
All right, we'll get into the most important player, and that's my player. I went with Davis Pennington, and I'm also going to highlight Cooper Moore.
Okay.
Now, hear me out. Aaron Bollinger went out with an injury. He's likely not returning the rest of the year. So you need your veteran guys to step up when it's needed most. Pennington hasn't had the best season. 17 points, that's great. 1 goal the entire year. He has not scored a goal since January 6th. You need your big-name defenseman to step up when it's needed most, and right now this defense is struggling. Without Bollinger, who was manning the power play, they really need Pennington to step up, because last year he was basically rotating with Jaden Lee of who was running that one power play quarterback spot. Davis Pennington right now is still sitting on the second power play unit, and Drew Hockley, who joined the team mid-year, is leading their power play. That's a really bad look for Davis Pennington.
I
I
agree
think
with you there.
Pennington needs to step it up, and he needs to become the go-to guy who plays all 3 sides of the puck for the Wildcats.
I agree. I think Pennington, and you alluded to Moore as well, need to step up a little more on that offensive side. Although they have been getting it done for the most part on that back end, on the defensive side of the ice. I do think that there's a little more to their offensive game that can be unlocked. I just think that they're still somehow at this point in the year still kind of gelling with those players. And now you see the injuries, you see the additions and subtractions partway through the year. They haven't had that time somehow to develop with those other players.
Yeah.
Not the player I would have thought of, but I like your pick. I really like it.
Yes.
So
All right.
I'm going to go with my pick. It's similar to Ava in the fact that I think they need to score more, but I'm going to go in specifically in 5-on-5. I'm going to go with the 5-on-5 scoring, and my player to look out for is Chris Pelosi. So you look at the Bobcats. They rely on the power play a lot. 30.6% on the power play. Guess what? 30.6% of their goals come from the power play. So their power play percentage is the same as their goal percentage from the power play.
Power play merchants.
Very much so. It seems like 3.6 goals per game is the best in the ECAC, but we mentioned they rely on that. Pelosi, plus 12, tied for 4th on Quinnipiac, and 30 points as a first-year Bobcat. But he's also 3rd in 5-on-5 goals with 9. So behind Ricketts and Mason Marcells, who all of his goals have come on the 5-on-5 variety. And I'm looking at him specifically because he hasn't scored a 5-on-5 goal in the last 4 games, and he's on a line with Mason Marcells and Aidan Serbo. When he scores, they're 7-3-1. When he and Serbone score, 3-0. When he and Marcello score, 2-0. They've scored 3. They've all 3 of them have scored in 1 game this year, and it was Union, one of their best performances of the year. Especially when he had 3 goals in the previous 4 games before the last 4 of the year. So Pelosi, one of the guys that has a lot of talent, a Bruins draft pick in the 3rd round, arguably their most talented player in terms of potential moving forward. So I just think that he's a guy that, as a first year, could step up a lot and be the difference maker for them in the playoffs.
I completely agree with you, and I think another reason why they really need to step up is that Treeler, Schwartz, Wilmer line They've been great all year. We've seen them score offensively, but you can't be a one-line team in the playoffs. That's just not going to get you anywhere. And yes, they have that Cherneskian-Air, Ricketts, Borgula line, and that's a great shutdown line that can also score when it's needed most. But if you're going to have your top line putting up good stats, not amazing stats, they need to step up, and I think Chris Pelosi is where it starts at the center position.
Yeah, Quinnipiac plays their best hockey when that line is on. So.
Yeah. And Rance talked all year about how they don't feel like they have a top 2 line or a top line. They have like 3 of those top 6 forward type of players. And so I think that just with Pelosi, when you have a guy like guys like Marcellus and Servo, 2 sophomores that were kind of in his position last year, they can play with anyone. And if he's rolling, they're rolling, and the team is rolling.
Well, now that we've looked at the team aspect, we've arrived at my favorite time of the night. It's time to hear everyone's craziest takes on who will win the ECAC. Nafa, start us off with your bracket.
I think this might get a little controversial. I kind of wish I didn't have to go first, but here, let's take a look at my bracket. Let's pull it up. In the first round, nothing too crazy. I'm going to go with most of the favorites here. Dartmouth over St. Lawrence, Brown over Princeton, RPI, my big upset, over Harvard, and then Cornell beating Yale. It's the second round. Dartmouth sweeps Union, and Quinnipiac sweeps RPI. But I've got Brown taking down Clarkson.
Are you
in
serious?
3 games, Cornell beating Colgate. And then I have Brown beating Quinnipiac in the semifinals. Dartmouth beating Cornell. Ava, I told you like the CJ Foley pick. Dartmouth takes home the ECAC over Brown. You think I'm crazy? Let's talk about Brown.
No, you are
Let's
crazy.
talk about Brown.
This
Let's
is
talk about Brown. Who beat Clarkson twice this year? The Brown
They
Bears.
did.
And on top of that, they beat them away. When they have to travel to Placid, Placid's more of like a home environment for Clarkson. They won, and that was the first game of that trip. So even if they lose that first game because of the Placid and Potsdam, upper New York effect, they can bounce back and win those other 2 games.
So let me ask you this. What is their record against Quinnipiac?
Their record against Quinnipiac is good, but it was a 1-goal loss at home, 0-2, right? 1-goal loss at home.
Quick to pivot there. Good
1-goal
job.
loss at home.
Quick to pivot
What
there.
did they do in that game at Quinnipiac? It was 1-0 going into the third, and they lost 4-0. Very physical game. How many goals did the Bobcats score in the power play?
Probably
3 of the 4. So
Yeah.
again, a potential
Power play merchants.
They
are the
I don't
We're not
think
denying
I don't
that.
think the whistle's going to be
Like top 5
called.
in
There's
power
not going to be as many calls in the playoffs. It's a little more physical. And also, Brown, 4 of the top 15 point scorers in the ECAC. The only team that can say the same are the Bobcats. So
Okay.
I just think that overall, Brown's a good team. Quinnipiac closed it out. Cornell closed out the season 4-2. Shane again, the goaltender.
Yeah.
But give me Dartmouth, first Ivy League championship in a while. They were 2-0 against Cornell. And they also beat Brown both times. Again, Foley, difference maker, both sides of the ice. But St. Louis is my guy to look out for because he's going far. I just think Foley topples him down.
Well, wow, you're going to hate my bracket. But, all right, well, let's pull up my bracket. Opening round, similar with you in most of the senses. I think Dartmouth is going to crush St. Lawrence. I think that's
my
pretty
God.
given.
Princeton over Brown.
Yeah, Princeton's beating Brown. There's no shot Brown is making it to the semifinal. I agree with you on that RPI Harvard pick. I think RPI is a very physical team, and I think that's going to play in their favor in the playoffs. And I have Cornell beating Yale. Cornell, they're a team that they struggled early on, and now they're really picking up heat. Moving to the quarterfinals, Dartmouth is going to beat Union. I think it's going to be a 3-game series, but I think it's going to be close. Quinnipiac's beating RPI in 2. Yeah, Clarkson is beating Princeton. Even if Clarkson did play Brown, they would still beat them in 2 games, but that's fine. We don't need to talk about that because this is my bracket. And then I think Cornell is going to upset Colgate. It's going to be a close game, but like I mentioned earlier, Cornell is a team where they're struggled early, and now they're finding their footing. And with Ian Shane being a playoff goalie, winning a championship last year, I think his experience as a senior is going to really take them over the top. But then I get to my semifinals, Quinnipiac is going to beat Cornell. I think that the Bobcats have it in them this year, and I know we've talked about how they had a struggle of a season, but I think this is one of the first times in a long time that people haven't gone into it and said, wow, Quinnipiac's going to win.
I'm just going to put it this way. I just think this year there's so much parity in the ECAC. The standings were close. It wasn't like Quinnipiac, Cornell, and then everyone else. I just think it was so close that a team like Brown that can get hot, again, I mentioned what their record is when St. Louis plays well. I just think that that's a team that could go far. But you know what? I can't fault you for playing it safe, I guess. I just don't think that a year where there's so much parity that it is going to play out like that.
The one thing I want to talk about real quick before we move on to your bracket, Quinnipiac-Clarkson in the final.
It would
That
be fun.
would be electric.
It
Both
would be
games went
fun.
to overtime. Clarkson got the better of Quinnipiac in overtime in both games. I think that would be a really good final. But what do you have?
Well, I'm actually going to agree with you, Eli.
Okay.
A spoiler for my pick, but to start in the first round, I mean, no shockers here, no upsets. I know you guys really like RPI with the upset there. I can't get behind it with that goaltending. And then we move on to the quarterfinals. I agree on the Dartmouth pick. I think Dartmouth is going to play really well in this bracket. Brown is not going to get past Quinnipiac. I know, Nafa, you're really, really into the Brown Bears, but not happening.
I have them in the semifinals.
Not happening.
Quinnipiac.
It's not happening. Clarkson 2-0ing Harvard, and then Cornell upsetting Colgate. I really think that Cornell has found their footing so far. Quinnipiac takes down Cornell. Dartmouth, the Cinderella story is over for CJ Foley. And then I'm going to disagree. Okay. I think Clarkson beats Quinnipiac. Granted, the overtime, I feel like that overtime win at the end of the year really, really builds the momentum for Clarkson, and we talked about that Potsdam advantage. And I mean, listen, I just think Clarkson has it this year.
So them beating Quinnipiac and then having a chance to still find a way to get the Cleary and losing to Colgate the next night, you think they still have that momentum from the Quinnipiac?
Listen, I think you have to take it a game-to-game basis. I mean, you can argue the Colgate thing all you want, but listen, I just don't see how. The way I see this Quinnipiac team, I genuinely think that they can be beaten, and they've been beaten.
They have been beaten this year, yes.
I think
plenty of times. A couple too many times.
All right. I know this is your favorite time of the night, buddy, but I'm going to ask you to.
Okay.
All right. But listen, I think the White Law drought is going to continue.
Okay.
Ava, what do you got?
Time to take a look at my bracket. It's actually pretty similar to Eli's.
It's the right back bracket, that's why.
First round, not really any upsets, but sorry, Nafa. I have Princeton beating Brown.
It's okay.
I have Princeton beating Brown. I have RPI beating Harvard. I know we all, except Stokes, we all kind of agreed with that.
There's always one upset.
With that.
Yeah.
There's always one upset, and I think it's going to be RPI.
Yeah, no,
I think RPI is a really motivated team. And then, Dartmouth is going to beat Union. I like Dartmouth. I like CJ Foley. I think he's going to bring them past Union. And then Quinnipiac should handle RPI fairly easily. And then Clarkson should also handle Princeton fairly easily. But then I have Colgate beating Cornell, which is where I differ a little bit from Eli's bracket. I think, like you said, it's going to be a close series, but I think ultimately Colgate will take it. And then for the semis, I think both games are going to overtime.
Okay.
I think both games are going to overtime. Quinnipiac will beat Dartmouth in overtime. And I have Colgate beating Clarkson. Maybe a controversial pick. Maybe a controversial
I don't
pick.
hate it.
If that's controversial.
I don't hate it though because Colgate did get the better of Clarkson for the last game of the regular season. So
exactly.
It has happened before.
They beat them before. They beat them 2-0 earlier in the year. I think it's something. It's more plausible than a lot of people are acting like it is. But then you get to the finals, and I think Quinnipiac is going to take down Colgate, and they're going to win it all.
I would like to say that if Clarkson, and you know what, that was the pick I went back and forth on, was Clarkson versus Brown. I do think it's going 3 regardless, and again, obviously I'm backing the Bears. But I think that if Clarkson defeats Brown in that quarterfinals, I do think Clarkson goes to the final. And then after that, anything can happen. I see him facing either Quinnipiac or Cornell. I think no matter what the matchup is, if it's any of those 3 teams that are facing off, it's going to be a great final.
If it's Quinnipiac-Clarkson, what's your final score?
Might as well just go 3-2 again, right?
All right.
3-2, but this time I think the puck luck goes in the Bobcats' way.
Oh, all right.
What do you guys think?
You know my answer.
I think 4-3 overtime Bobcats.
Score prediction?
I mean, it's pretty obvious it's going to be OT, and I think it's 3-2 Clarkson.
Wow.
3-2
No
Clarkson,
faith.
3 times in the year. Well, we got all our brackets in, but it's time to take a quick break. When we return, we will be previewing everything you need to know about the national stage. Stick with us on Inside the ECAC Men's Ice Hockey Edition.
Everyone has a ritual, that small thing to keep us focused.
A habit we never skip, to clear our minds and elevate our performance.
But what do you do to keep your head in the game? To drown out the self-doubt and support your mental health. Because being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mental health. Discover the resources that you need to keep your mind focused and your mental health a priority.
Everyone has a ritual, that small thing that keeps us focused. A habit we never skip to clear our minds and elevate our performance.
But what do you do to keep your head in the game, to drown out the self-doubt and support your mental health? Because being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mind and mental health. Discover the resources you need to keep your mind focused and your mental health a priority.
Here at Sports Pause, we like to have balance between having fun and working hard. Sometimes that competition we cover gets into our producing.
Tune in every Monday night at 9:30 at q30tv.com/watch for all the news, highlights, and more. This is Sports Pause.
Do you enjoy debating Quinnipiac sports?
That's all flash, no catch. She didn't net it in the back of the net. That's not even a goal.
What are you doing pulling out Ryan?
Brady, that's like a crossover with a missed layup.
Bobcat Breakdown is the place for you, with debate, analysis, and so much more.
Mate Marinov. He is good, but oh man, is he bad. And
That team is amazing. How do you not put Fish on women's volley?
Tune in to Bobcat Breakdown every Tuesday night at 9:30 p.m. on q30tv.com/watch.
Welcome back. Now that we've taken a look at the ECAC, it's time to go to the national scale. Let's take a look at the pairwise rankings. The Boston College Eagles, they've sat at the top for almost all of the second half of the season. Right behind them is Michigan State at number 2. Then Minnesota, Maine, and Western Michigan close out the top 5. So the Hokies dominating the next 3 spots thanks to Providence, Boston College, and UConn. Ohio State and Denver round out the top 10. And Quinnipiac sits at 13, which would just barely put them in the NCAA tournament. Now that we've seen where the teams rank, it's time to see who each of us believe will be matching off in the national championship. Ava, why don't you start us off?
You know, I didn't get really creative with this one. My national championship matchup, it's got to be Boston College and Michigan State. I mean, there's just no questioning how good these two teams are. For Boston College, you have Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault, 44 points each. They're just dominating. Every chance they get, dominance. They're 89.8 on the penalty kill percentage. One weird thing about Boston College, though, is they're 18.5% on the power play, which is 43rd in the nation and is just a really strange outlier compared to all their other stats. They have Jacob Fowler, 939 save percentage, which is just insane. 167 goals against. I think if this is the matchup, it's going to be a goalie duel. Because on the other side, you have Michigan State with Trey Augustine, sophomore, 925 save percentage, 209 goals against. Just, again, dominance. Michigan State haven't lost a game at neutral site all year. So
interesting.
That puts them in a good spot, I think. And then number 3 nation, player in the nation in points, Isaac Howard. I mean, he's 23 goals, 23 assists, very balanced. I know you care a lot about assists because of Jack Ricketts, but
True.
I think BC versus Michigan State is just, it's going to be the matchup.
I like the pick. What do you have?
I mean, I have to agree with BC. BC's number 1 team in the nation. They're number 1 team in the nation for a reason. Jacob Fowler, that 1.67 goals against average and a .939 save percentage is ridiculous. But my other pick, I'm going to go with number 3 Minnesota. I really like them. Their power play is 15th. That's not really great. But the goals, they're number 1 in the nation in scoring. And that's because of Jimmy Snuggerud. Snuggerud has been lights out for this team. But back to BC, I mean, who don't they have? Ryan Leonard, Gabe Perreault, Teddy Stika. They have James Higgins. They have like half the USA World Juniors roster on their roster. I mean, they're firing on all cylinders. They're probably gonna do well in Hockey East. But I'm gonna switch over to Minnesota. Clinch to share with Michigan State for the Big Ten title, and they've been back and forth with Michigan State all year. It's a 1A, 1B situation. It really depends on your preference. And are they the strongest team that Minnesota's ever had in their entire history? No. But they win, and they do and they're pretty good at offense. And granted, defense will be lacking, but they're playing in the Big Ten. Big Ten is always a competitive conference. They're always gonna have a good game for you day in, day out, even if it's Notre Dame, Ohio State. It's gonna be a good game. But you know, looking at Minnesota, they got their Ghidorah, Chimera, Cerberus, whatever you want to call them. Jimmy Snuggerud, Connor Girth, and Matthew Wood. Lights out. All of them point per game players. Granted, I know some of you don't really like points, but listen. I know more about Snuggerud, 7th in the nation in goals per game. Okay. This offense is lights out. And going into the NCAA, offense is always key, just like every part of the game. And I really like Minnesota making it all the way.
Do you think that this Minnesota team is better than the Minnesota team that lost to Quinnipiac in the national championship?
No. I don't think so.
All right.
Especially if you look at the netminders, I don't think so.
Okay, I agree. I just need to check you on that one. All right, let's take a look at my pick. I got BC. I got Michigan State.
Yes.
It's boring, whatever. It's the two best teams. Like, it's 1, 2, and the rest of the teams are nowhere near them. Yes, I know their power play is not the best, but BC, their top 2 lines, their second line alone could be a first line on any team in the NCAA. I just think that BC is way too deep, like you mentioned. I mean, even Teddy Stiga playing third line minutes, sometimes second line minutes, but he's...
The amount of rewards that he's racked up, that Hagens has racked up, the entire team is racked up. It's ridiculous.
But I think the biggest thing for these two teams, you talked about it, it's Fowler and it's Augustine. The two of them are hands down the 2 best goalies in the NCAA, and I think... Who do you think's better than them?
We'll see my pick.
Let me guess. You're really into Minnesota State, aren't you?
You'll see when I show my pick.
He's really into Minnesota
I just think that those 2 goalies are way too good, and like I said, for the ECAC side of it, if you have a good goalie, they can take you anywhere, and that's why I picked Ian Shane. If you have Jacob Fowler or Trey Augustine, they can take you anywhere.
I agree.
You know who's ahead of Fowler in
Who?
goals against average this
Who?
year? Albin Boya. Show me the natty pick. You know what? Right now, the bracket doesn't agree with us with the bracketology, but I'm picking who I think are the 2 best teams in the NCAA. We can harp on BCO. We want Eamon Powell on the defensive side. Hasn't been mentioned yet so far, I don't think. Give me the Maine Black Bears. 21-6-5, 4th best, tied for 13th in penalty kill, but 3rd best goals against average as a team, and Boya could bring this team far. I think that right now, if you look at the bracketology, BC, and on that side of the bracket, that is a gauntlet to go through. But I think when you look at Minnesota and Michigan State playing in the Big Ten tournament, one of them could fall in the pairwise and give a chance for Maine to jump up, or Maine could even fall down and potentially end up there. You never really know. So I'm just going with, I think, who are the 2 best teams in the nation. And I know they might not have the pure talent that these other teams have, but you still got Taylor McCarr, you still got Harrison Scott, who are both in the top area. And then Lindenberg coming back from injury, I was going to mention as well. This team, they went 10-3-3 without him. Almost just as good. They're 11-3-2 with him. So they're a very deep team. And since Ben Barr took over, finished last in the Hockey East, then went to 6th, 3rd place last year, and then back into the NCAA tournament, first time since 2011 and 12. And I think this year they take another step forward. I know they struggle against Cornell, losing to Ian Shane. We mentioned him earlier.
Oh, yeah, Ian Shane, he's good.
This time, I think Boya and that top-tier goaltending and defense can take this team very far.
You're just picking Maine because we went up to Maine and
I'm not taking Maine
bias.
I'm taking Maine because this team has just consistently been better and better each year. And I don't think there's another team outside of Boston College that can say that they're better than them, just because when you look on that other side, I think Michigan State has that talent. But if you go against a hot goaltender, we mentioned Ian Shane last year, and then Denver going to the national championship last year on the entire back of their goaltender to then beat Boston College. You beat talent with a hot goaltender, and Boya might be the best of them all.
I mean, you talk. Yeah.
I don't know. I think Trey Augustine's a pretty hot goaltender. But
I'm sorry to be an but I just don't agree with the Maine pick.
I just think that when you have to go through, obviously, Maine has the Hockey East tournament,
and that could spell like disaster for them. They could lose.
That could spell disaster too. They could lose. So deep. They're still making the tournament.
We're not
the same way that Michigan State and Minnesota will. But I think when you look at the goaltending, obviously Boya versus Augustine would be a great matchup. I would love to see that as a national championship pick. I just couldn't talk myself into taking Maine over Boston College if they were in the same side of the bracket. I do think that the top 3 teams are in order, Boston College, and then Maine, Michigan State, I think are pretty close. I just think that Boya is one of the top tier goaltenders.
At least you didn't take Brown.
As much as I would love to keep this debate going, we have our final debate question of the night, which is, what team in the NCAA do you think will make the biggest surprise run as a sleeper team? So, Nafa, who should we be looking out for?
I don't know how people are still sleeping on this team. They're the reigning national champions. Give me the Denver Pioneers. They're at the 10th spot right now, 24-9-1 overall record, 2nd in goals per game with 3.91. Jack Devine leads the NCAA in points, but they're also 6th in scoring defense. They're the top scoring margin team, 1.82, 133 goals for, 71 goals against. 2nd best power play, behind only Quinnipiac. 16th in penalty kill isn't the greatest, but still is above average, and then they're the second best in faceoffs. So when you need to draw one in your defensive zone or in the offensive zone and a key point in the game, you can trust this team to do it. Obviously, you mentioned Jack Devine, 1.41 points per game, the best in the NCAA, but also Aiden Thompson and Zeev Bouillum, also in the top 15 at 9 and 14 per game respectively, and 9 and 15 in total points. So I just think this team has a good top 3 forwards, and then also just overall have played well on the special teams and can score and can defend.
I think Denver's a very good pick, but I'm going with a little bit more of a sleepier team than Denver. I think Denver's a very good team. I just don't know if I would say that they're a sleeper team, knowing that they're coming off a national championship last year.
Oh, who's your pick then?
Who's my pick?
Who's your pick?
My pick, I'm a big Connecticut guy.
Oh.
I'm going the UConn Huskies.
So a team higher than Denver in the pairwise? And we're going to say that Denver's not a sleeper, but whatever, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. UConn, 9-5-4 against ranked teams this season. So not the best, but that's still a really good record.
Worst.
But hear me out. Since they beat Quinnipiac in the CTI's tournament, they are 6-2-2, and in 6 of those games, they were against ranked teams, and they ended with a positive 6-goal margin. UConn is a very good team, and I think on the back of Tyler Muselik, I think that they can make a deep run.
I can't even disagree because they were one of my other potential picks for a sleeper team. I really like that pick.
Okay.
But again, when I think sleeper team, I think a team that can win 2 games. I just don't see them beating Boston College.
I don't think they would beat Boston College, but I think they could slip away with one game.
They could give them a scare against
I think
BC.
they could give BC a scare and potentially win 1 game.
All right, I'm going to jump even further up the pairwise. I'm going to go my sleeper team. I got to go Western Michigan.
Okay.
Granted, number 5 team in the nation. I get it. But on paper, this team is a statistical anomaly. I mean, it's one of the most complete teams I've ever seen in the nation. NAFA, don't even give me that look. Here's a list. Here is a list, NAFA, of what they rank in top 10 in the nation. Face-off win percentage, power play percentage, scoring offense, scoring defense. Oh yeah, scoring margin. The most productive player, Alex Bump, 36 goals, point per game player. If Bump falls short, they have Owen Michaels, Sam Solon, and Tim Walsh. They can pick up the slack. This team is very good. Like, I don't
Yes,
understand.
they're very good. That's why they're 5 in the
They're not
Okay. Granted, yes, they're number 5 in the nation. They beat your team, Denver. That's why I probably like them.
Great, that's why Denver's a sleeper.
Your sleeper teams can win 2 games. My sleeper teams make the Frozen Four. Listen,
because they're not a sleeper team.
No, they are a sleeper
None
team.
of the things you are saying are explaining to me why they're a sleeper team. You're just explaining to me why they're a good team. We know they're good. They're 5th.
No, they're just underrated. I don't hear anything I don't hear anything about Western Michigan. Do you? Do you? No.
They're 5th in the pairwise. They're 5th
She
in the
doesn't have
pairwise.
anything to say. They're 5th in the pairwise. Do the people actually think they're actually 5th in the pairwise? No, because they think a Hockey East team is going to win. They think BC is going to win.
Your take is like saying when Quinnipiac was number 1 in the pairwise, they're a sleeper team because no one.
No, it isn't. No, it is not.
Exactly.
We're also currently in Hamden, Connecticut, where people aren't going to talk about Michigan because that's in Michigan and we're on the East Coast. But Ava,
talked about
hear
Denver.
Ava, let's hear it.
Who here has been to Denver?
They don't need to. That's why they're sleeper.
Have you been to Denver? Have you been to Denver?
Sleeper?
No.
Actually, I have been to Denver, but that's besides the point. We're going to move on to my pick now. You've talked enough. I got to go with Penn State. State. They're a really streaky team. They're a really streaky team, but they're on a hot streak right now.
A lot of people know about Penn State.
A lot of people know about Penn State. So, you know what? They're 18-12-4, 7-2-1 in their last 10 games of the regular season. They have experience against those top teams. They swept Wisconsin. They won and tied against Michigan State. They split against Minnesota. They're 14th in the pairwise. Could be better, could be worse. Aiden Fink tied for 2nd in NCAA points. I think Penn State is a really underrated team. Like I said, 14th in the pairwise. I think they have. I don't know if they have a chance to, go all the way, but I think they can make a serious run for it, and it's a team that I think people should be keeping their eye on.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for them is they're playing in a really tough conference in the Big Ten. And you looked at their game against Quinnipiac; it was a 3-2 loss where they gave Quinnipiac a run for their money, and a lot of people were expecting that to be a bit of a blowout for Quinnipiac, and all of a sudden it was a 1-goal game in the 3rd period. So I like that pick. I don't hate it.
The one thing that concerns me, again, I'm a big goaltender guy. I just think that when you're in these situations, you need a goaltender to steal you games, and I don't think they have it in the crease. Again, I'm not going to say Denver's going to win it all, but Matt Davis last year was the hero, and this year he's got a better goals against average than Trey Augustine, the goaltender of Michigan State, who you guys put in the national championship. So again, I really like the Penn State pick. Obviously, they're a hot team. But they're also a little bit scary because if they run into a buzzsaw in that Big Ten tournament, they could miss it entirely if some team sneaks in behind them. You got a team like potentially Arizona State that could creep up, a UMass or a UMass Lowell that can get in ahead of them. I just think that that's the scary thing for me, but I do think that if they get in and they continue this hot streak, they can really, really beat anyone, especially with Michigan this week.
Yeah.
Well, before we end the show, we wanted to take a look back at what we think were the best games of the season. Each of us will take a look at some of the highlights from the game we felt was the most exciting this season. Ava, let's take a look at your highlight.
So for my game of the year, I went with Quinnipiac at Dartmouth, January 31st. It was a 5-4 overtime win. Ricketts got his second hat trick of the season. He had the game-tying goal with less than 4 minutes left in regulation while they were down. Overtime winner less than a minute into overtime. And aside from Ricketts, 3 of the 5 goals were Jack Ricketts, but 10 different players with points in this game. It was an all-around team effort, and after this game, the rest of the season, they lost 2 more games, both to Clarkson. So I think this was a really good show of how they handle adversity.
Yeah.
Lost 4-2 to Dartmouth earlier in the year. And I think that they battled hard, and it was a back-and-forth game, and I thought they handled it really, really well.
Yeah, this was the type of team performance we grew accustomed to watching with Quinnipiac throughout the end of the season. I know that they had the 10 different point scores in that game. Again, a trend that came through towards the end of the year. Besides those 2 games to Clarkson, they played really complete hockey in those other wins, dominating teams that you should dominate, like Union, like RPI, like St. Lawrence. And I just think that, yeah, that's a really good pick because of that kind of started the trend down the stretch.
I think another thing for this game that you have to look at is it showed that they can battle the adversity. There were a lot of lead changes. It was a tough game for them on the road, and they showed that they can continue to fight no matter what the score is, and I think that showed a lot about them.
I agree.
Well, Ava, games at the Thompson Arena are very nice, but games at the Mecca are just a little bit nicer. My pick has to be the Frozen Apple at MSG. I mean, what is there to say? It is the Mecca. Cornell packed the place. It felt like a home game for them.
A whole playoff game.
A home playoff game, a home NHL playoff game. That red at the national anthem made me jump out of my seat. I almost fell off. But listen, it was also one of the best games I've ever seen all year. I mean, this Bobcats team played up to the competition. They knew the stakes. And, I mean, the Cornell team gave them a fight, and they were coming off a big loss the weekend before.
Yeah.
And in Cornell, Quinnipiac went to the home turf and beat them.
And I believe it was their first time beating them since, I think it was 2015 or 16.
No,
It had been a while. It had been a while since they had won a lineup.
It certainly has. And, I mean, who loves some extra hockey? Everybody loves some extra hockey.
Extra
hockey. I mean, the OT and the shootout was some of the most intense hockey I've ever seen. Well, not the shootout, but listen, my heart was racing the entire time. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Bobcats, I mean, Cooper Moore scored in this game. We don't see that at all. It ended in a tie officially, but the Bobcats just ran into Ian Shane, and unfortunately, that was just the way the cookie crumbled.
Yeah, I just think that back and forth overtime was so exciting. I'd say I was glued to my seat, but really, I was standing pretty much the entire game. Yeah. That second period was just great for them. And again, Ian Shane, Eli's player to watch. Again, I think we picked 4 pretty dang good players to watch.
I would agree.
Absolutely.
Ian Shane just stole that game for Cornell entirely.
Playing at MSG for them and also getting to be there for us at MSG to watch that, just a great experience overall.
Yeah.
Me and F had a fun train ride.
Very fun train ride.
But right back, not so much.
All right, well, let's look at a game in Connecticut. Yes, MSG, it's all cool and stuff, but
I really love Connecticut.
I'm a big Connecticut guy.
It's growing on me.
It's growing on me. It's home away from home. Virginia's kind of far. But my game, I have UConn and Quinnipiac in the semifinals of the CTI tournament. A game where you have a spot in a championship on the line. That's what you live for as a hockey player. And Ryan Tattle, you see it on your screen right now, just dominated Quinnipiac all game long. He was all over the ice. He was instigating. He was putting the puck in the back of the net. He was drawing penalties. He drew that penalty where Quinnipiac got scored on with half a second left in the game. And Travis Treloar, being the leader he is, scores the tying goal to get Quinnipiac back in this game and tie it up at 1 in that second period. I just think Quinnipiac showed a lot in this game. And yes, they ended up losing in a tough atmosphere. But since then, they've really gone on a tear, only losing to Clarkson twice. I just think that this game showed a lot for Quinnipiac, and it also showed a lot for UConn. Talked about them as my sleeper team, obviously, but I think that UConn, it showed a lot about them, and it showed that, yes, they're in the Hockey East where they're probably not going to finish first or second or third, but
I think you mentioned this, Eli. Just the intensity of that game.
Yeah.
This was the 2024 CTI's final.
Yeah.
These teams do not like each other whatsoever. This game was probably, again, one of the better games that the Bobcats have played all year. It's just unfortunate that Ryan Tattle was there. And I mean, just in the Mattier family arena, nobody had any stakes. The shoe game was afterwards. It was one of the best environments I've ever seen Quinnipiac play in.
Yeah, Martiri Family Arena is just a great atmosphere for hockey and a great atmosphere for this tournament. I really enjoy seeing them play on campuses, and yeah, it was just an unbelievable ending just to see Tattle score that with 0.5 seconds. UConn hadn't beaten Quinnipiac and had always lost to them in the CTI. So to get that first CTI championship and win over Quinnipiac was just overall just a great weekend for them.
Yeah, interesting to pick a loss, but I do think that was one of Quinnipiac's best games all year. Penalties killed them, though.
Yeah.
And they got to get better at that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And you know what? I don't want to pick a loss, but we said most exciting, and this one was very unforgettable. I'm going to go with that second game of the weekend up in Orono. Quinnipiac taking on the UMaine Black Bears. Again, I said they might go to the Natty.
It's almost like he's from Maine.
Almost
guys.
like he's from Maine.
I wonder
Quinnipiac fell behind 2-0. Power play goal from Aaron Schwartz made it 2-1, including a shorthand goal by Taylor McCarr, which was the first goal. Then Maine scored a third goal in the first period to go up 3-1, and then they went up 4-1 in the second period. But Quinnipiac, they responded with 3 goals of their own in that second period. One from Tyler Borgula, one from Jack Ricketts, and the third one on the power play from Travis Treelor. And then with 6:39 into the third period, Chris Pelosi and Tyler Borgula and Charlie Letty, 3 new Bobcats, put together a performance to get the go-ahead goal. Pelosi's first of the year, Borgula's second point of the night. Good weekend for him. And I know they lost late, gave up that tying goal with just under 30 seconds left in the game, and then fell in overtime. But again, a back and forth overtime, 37 seconds left in the game. It was a thriller. And again, they didn't win, but to that point, I think that was their most complete and overall team performance. After that first period, I think all 3 aspects of the game played well.
I think the biggest thing for Quinnipiac there, you mentioned it, Chris Pelosi, Tyler Borgula, Charlie Letty, a lot of their first-year guys.
And Jeremy Wilmer had a point in that game as well.
A lot of the new guys for them, they stepped up. It's not easy going all the way up to Maine, having to take that bus ride, having to stay in a hotel. And they really showed that they can compete with the best teams. The only thing that concerned me about that game was Matej Marinov had a really rough game. He struggled in that game. Gave up 6 goals, and probably 3 of them he should have made the save on.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing that concerned me.
I agree. I just think, again, it was an exciting game. Both teams had penalty struggles. Yeah. And overall, just, again, exciting. Potential game of the year in NCAA hockey as a whole, and it came in October.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I completely agree. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have here for Inside the ECAC Men's Ice Hockey Edition. Make sure to follow us on X and Instagram at Q30 Sports for all the updates on postseason play. For Zach Naffa, Zach Stokinger, and Ava Heaton, I'm Eli Ehlers. Have a great rest of your day, Bobcats.